0NQ. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close on Friday the 10th of March at 3 p.m. Good luck.
Yeah, best of luck with that. Now, we're a nation of dog lovers, as you can see. This is lovely Ivy here.
Hey, Ivy. You're OK.
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're here today. We've got a lovely lady. Her name is Sharon Williams, and she's just wonderful, isn't she?
Yeah, because during the cost-of-living crisis, Sharon, who's a vet, has seen an increase in owners asking for their poorly dogs to be put down, as owners can no longer afford the bill. So she's been taking in the pups herself and now has 20 dogs running around her home. And she joins us now alongside stars of the show, Ivy and Atticus. Hey, Ivy. You're right, Ivy.
Hi, Ivy. And then little Atticus says it right now.
Like, well done. Hey, Atty, you're right.
Oh, Sharon, so you've got 20 dogs in all?
Roughly. We go up and down a little bit because, obviously, as we rescue, we try to rehome ones who are rehomable.
Yeah.
So it does vary a little bit.
So is it one big fostering house you've got, or, like, you've got
Sort
some...
of.
Yeah.
I have quite a few dogs who I end up keeping, like little Atticus, who I end up so attached to.
Yeah, you can see why.
Yeah.
Sharon, so let's go back. Where did this start? Did you have a dog anyway, a couple of dogs anyway, as a vet?
Yes, I've always had dogs, even before I became a vet. And I would say, I know you said obviously about dogs being relinquished due to cost of living, but I think it's always been something that I've done. I'm not necessarily linking it to cost of living. Sort of my first job, my first one was a little Jack Russell. Hadn't been a vet very long, and she'd nipped the child. They'd only just got her from a rescue centre, and I was asked to put her to sleep, and I said, well, can I find another option, speak to rescue centres? The lady was lovely. She was very concerned and said, but I'm worried about what might end up with her. You know, I don't want her to ever be in a bad home. So in the end, I said, well, how about if I agree to take her and keep her, and never rehome her? So I ended up with my first little dog.
Open, the door was just tiny ajar there, and then
I think
from there
I'm
on
falling in love.
It's lovely, isn't it?
I'm falling in love with
that
this
kind of
little
dog
one.
is exactly the sort of dog.
That's the sort of dog I need.
Yeah.
It's such a lovely thing to do, and I can't believe that some people actually think about putting their dogs down just purely because they can't take care of them.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, there are obviously very many different situations, and everyone's situation is different. So there are some times where people are struggling physically to look after them, or they've had change of health. Sometimes you have people who've passed away and their family can't take care of the pets. So there's many, many reasons why we might see dogs suddenly in a position where they have no home to go to. And at the moment, there are many, many dogs who are struggling for homes, and rescue centres are really struggling to take any further.
Sharon, how does that work in terms of the legality of it? If people, for example, if a Jack Russell or whatever dog nips a child and the owner doesn't feel they can look after it anymore, are you allowed to just put a dog down like that or not?
I think in the eyes of the law, dogs are property.
Yeah.
And I think you have to protect their welfare.
Yeah.
But euthanasia is actually sort of considered to be potentially a treatment option in some
Right.
circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think although, me personally, I would find it very difficult to do, I do think it's very hard because it's hard to find a place for a dog who, a lot of dogs who nip, it's out of fear. It's not necessarily actually an aggressive dog, but they've been in the wrong circumstance, or perhaps with a child who's not interpreted their body language. But even so, it's difficult to then find a place for that dog and obviously, potentially think about the culpability if then that dog did nip somebody else. Because
quite often, people want to put the dogs down because they don't have insurance and the medical bills are so high. And so, for example, Ivy's case, did Ivy have a cleft lip? Is that right?
Ivy had a very severe cleft palate.
Yeah.
So we've had Ivy since she was a day old, and obviously she was part of a litter. We ended up with two of them because they both had cleft palates and cleft lips, and you can still see her lip is odd. And she needed intensive care when she was tiny because she couldn't feed because there was a communication between her nose and mouth. So we had to sort of actually stomach tube every 2 hours to feed her until she was old enough to take big biscuits that wouldn't get stuck in the cleft. And when she was old enough again, we then obviously had major reconstructive surgery to sort of sort that out, which is worth it because obviously she's now got a happy life ahead of her.
Yeah.
But it was very intensive to begin with.
And presumably, if you hadn't been there or if a vet hadn't been there, then there's no way she probably wouldn't have made it.
I think it'd be very difficult for somebody to sort of manage, one, the intensity, but also knowledge to how to stomach tube correctly. Some people, some breeders do it, but it is easy to sort of have issues as a result of it.
You're in a moment there,
I know
Al.
you've got 20 dogs, and Is there any dogs you'd like to get rid of, maybe, that might want to come and live with me?
I mean, if you're talking about Atticus, that's a no.
You love it. So what is it? What's logistically? What is it like to have to walk 20 dogs? That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Where do they all sleep?
So we have them in sections because obviously as they come in, new dogs, I wouldn't just put them with the rest of the dogs because you could end up with fights and things.
Yeah.
So until I'm happy with their behaviour. So some of them will be in rooms on their own, some might be in crates for periods of time, obviously rotating them. Once I'm happy with their behaviour, they generally sleep on top of me. So we have a large section of dogs and I get very, very small amount of space to sleep.
Oh, my God. I suppose you just got to the conclusion that your house is going to be a mess now.
Yeah. How do they all get on?
Yeah.
It's like they got good pecking order?
So, obviously, it's like probably having 20 children. So you will always have little squabbles and,
So-and-so
disagreements
so-and-so, yeah.
or fighting over a toy or a bit of food. But it's not, it's manageable and it's sort of we know what the dogs are like, so we know which ones are suitable to be together. In terms of pecking order, little Atticus probably is quite high up there.
Top dog, yeah. Always the little ones, isn't it?
If someone goes near his blanket, he tells them off.
How many hours of walking are you doing every day?
It's variable because obviously I work full time, but I also have sisters and nieces who help
everyone
me.
pulls together.
Yeah, and I've also got some friends as well who volunteer to walk them. So we try to get them out as much as possible. But it could be, if a good day, if I've managed to finish work early enough, we'll go through maybe 3 one-hour walks with certain groups of dogs.
Nice.
So.
Sharon, I mean, one of the reasons we had you on is to sort of highlight how hard it is for people to rehome pets at the moment and so forth. So the Scottish Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals said that more than 4,000 calls to its helpline last year were from people inquiring about how to give up their pets, more than 3 times as much as 2021. And then the Dogs Trust has reported almost 50% increase in dogs from owners about rehoming their pets this year. What would you say to people when they are getting a dog? What would be your advice?
My advice would be to think very carefully before you make a 15-year commitment.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's a very big difference between having Atticus for 15 years and having a Malinois for 15 years.
Yeah.
And we've seen lately a lot of Malinois. It's, sort of the dogs that are used for...
Is that a big dog?
They're like big shepherds.
Right.
But they're used by police, they're used for personal protection. They can scale 8-foot walls with ease. And if you think about a dog like that, if you don't give them enough sort of stimulus, you'll end up with them scaling your garden fence and taking themselves off. They can be very destructive if they don't get enough, sort of walking and enough mental stimulation. And I think that's extremely different to having Atticus. So thinking about what you can manage, can you financially afford it? Because they are obviously a financial commitment as well. You need to make sure you've got all of that in place. And as I say, sort of the time, whether your job might change in the future, whether you're planning to have children, you've got to factor all of that in. Because if you're 4 years down the line, what do you do with that dog? It's not fair to pass that dog to someone else, in my opinion. Yeah. I think it should be a lifetime commitment and we should be keeping them forever, really.
And what about insurance? Because I know it's such a boring thing for people to have to contemplate. But, for someone that's had a cat who was really ill, I was so grateful that we took out insurance because those vet bills can just go through the roof. Yes.
I mean, I think we always, whenever we get new puppies and kittens in or new clients, we always discuss the importance of insurance. Even I as a vet, Atticus is insured because if something happened to him, I want to know that I can afford for him to have the very best, to give him the best chance of getting better. I would say it is very, very important. It's a bit of a minefield. There's lots of options out there. There's lots of companies. But most vets practices will have leaflets sort of detailing what type of things you can get in insurance. Most vets and nurses are happy to discuss with potential customers sort of what they can look for and be able to offer advice. We can't specifically advise any particular insurance company, but we can go through sort of what you can look for, and most people will be happy to sort of discuss that. So I'd say if you're thinking about getting a pet, maybe make an appointment or call your local practice and sort of see if you can get some information beforehand, have a good chat and make sure you're fully prepared.
And Sharon, I know you pay for all these dogs and you're doing an amazing job. You're incredible. But if for anyone who is struggling money-wise, are there any charities out there that can help them?
There's lots of charities. Not all of them can cater to everybody. So, for example, the PDSA is a charity that will help people who are on certain benefits in certain catchment areas. You'd have to sort of contact them to see if you would be eligible. But if you are struggling, that's always worth checking. There's lots of local charities as well, so you can contact them. Say, for example, we've had people who've had a very, very difficult bill to they haven't expected, and sometimes local charities have said we'll contribute X amount towards that to help them out. So it's always worth contacting local charities. There are things like now there's sort of pet food banks and things that are sort of being
so good, isn't it?
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah.
Sharon, thanks. I don't know how to break this to you, but Atticus has been giving Alison the eye through most of that interview. So I know he's hiding now because he's quite bashful about it. I know.
I love Attica. I love both your dogs, Ivy, Attica,
Love
Sharon. Thank you so
Ivy.
much
Thank
for joining
you, Sharon.
us. Thank you so
for
much.
having me.
Brilliant having you on. Thank you.